On this episode of Couch Conversations, humans have a lot of vices and we're all at the mercy of them. And if we don't recognize them and we're not working on them, we are at risk of harming the people we're in relationship with, but also ourselves. Welcome to Couch Conversations, a podcast for women who want to chat about real life issues. Hi, I'm Courtney B. Reiley. We're talking about what it means to be a woman of God today, how to find purpose in life, and how to deal with tough conversations. So grab a cup of coffee and join us on the couch for some good conversation. Hi, welcome to the Women of Influence podcast. I'm Courtney Reiley, and I'm here with a friend of mine, Amanda Ward. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Courtney.
So today's episode, I'm actually kind of excited. I'm excited about all of the episodes, but I'm especially excited to have this style of conversation because it's right in the same vein as just Women of Influence and our mission. Our heart is to give all women a seat at the table because we know the table is his table and there is a seat for everyone. And so in order to do that, we have the vulnerable and authentic conversations like we do on this podcast. Sometimes I say tackling tough conversations together without sounding too like chintzy. But I like that today's conversation is in that same vein. Like I said, just having some authentic conversation on a couple of, I think, hot topics for women and topics that aren't discussed a lot. And you, I believe, are the perfect person to contribute because of the roles you play in helping women through these. So Amanda is a licensed therapist and the owner of her coaching business, Awarding Life.
Yes. Well, thank you for having me. And I appreciate that invite to have these conversations with you.
Oh, absolutely. So I had suggested a couple of topics and I loved your response, which was, I'm a big fan of authentic conversation versus directed focus. So I just, when you said that just this morning, I was like, man, that's so exactly what the whole podcast is. It's just authentic conversation meant to encourage women that these are topics we all deal with and we all navigate. They're not alone. And so, with that said, I think one of the first ones I had written down, and we can just kind of see where it goes, but the power of and stigma around counseling. And as a licensed therapist, right, I'm sure that you navigate that and see that come up.
Yeah. Well, I think there's the general understanding of what stigma around therapy is, whether that's I don't want people to know I have problems or I don't need help with my problems or I'm not worthy enough to fix or have help with my problems, and I think that there are different stigmas depending on males and females too. I mean, that's been a big thing we've seen over the past couple of decades with men being able to come forward and acknowledge that they have issues as well as women. But I think one of the biggest things is I think there's a lack of clarity on what therapy really is. It's not just a diagnosis and a fix it. Therapy is really about relationship and it's about coming into a safe relationship, which is really hard to come by in our world right now. And historically, trust is hard work and it requires two people to be connected to self and to be accountable to the discipline of doing hard things and saying hard things. And that's really hard to do when you're out there at the mercy of your own devices. Humans have a lot of vices and we're all at the mercy of them. And if we don't recognize them and we're not working on them, we are at risk of harming the people we're in relationship with, but also ourselves. And so therapy is really just about sitting down in a safe place. But I think it's something it's also very shocking to people when we do kind of establish a therapeutic relationship it's the relationship itself that is healing, that allows you to come to awareness of things and, work through either painful things that you've been through or just work through hard truths that you need to implement into your life. And so also recognizing that it's not just about thinking or talking either. I think that's one of my biggest struggles is I'm a licensed therapist, but one of the reason I tag so many letters behind my name is because it's not enough to be a licensed therapist and actually promote healing and wholeness in people. I believe that you are mind, body, spirit. So we do have to do the nutrition thing. We do have to do the knowing yourself and working on personal identity thing. We do have to do the thought and behavior thing. It all has to work together. And so a lot of people maybe don't really understand that in order to have whole life change, I have to bring whole self to the table and address all of those things. And that's hard. Like, I have this one problem. Can we just fix this one problem?
Yeah. Well,
And
it's easier and safer to compartmentalize, right?
Yes.
And just say, I have this, I'm comfortable with talking about and opening up and being vulnerable about this.
Yes, exactly.
But these are off limits.
Right. Right. And that will work for a period of time, but it's going to be temporary because you can't negate parts of self and expect to have a whole self on the other side of it.
Yeah. Well, I know for me personally, I love my therapy. Get as much as I can. But I think I first opened up about when it was in a business. I actually, in the business world, went through some transitions with ownership of my company years and years ago. And I reached out to a counselor, a therapist, and began doing work. And I loved it because it was, like you said, a safe, confidential space. It was unbiased. The person actually didn't know me.
Yes.
He didn't know the Courtney that was, the facade and all the things.
Yeah, that's huge.
And so there were so many benefits to it. But I think I was that person was like, I'm okay talking about the business stuff.
Yes.
But like, don't go there on the trauma growing up or the relational.
Yes.
And so I experienced that, bringing that one area and then quickly learning that they're all connected. There's the limiting beliefs that you wake up with in your marriage, they translate into your business and they translate into your parenting and in your friendships and your health.
Yes.
So,
and you do have to start somewhere. So there is absolutely nothing wrong with people who are going, I just want to fix this area. Like that's human, that's normal. But like you said, just accepting and acknowledging the reality that like, oh, I'm much bigger than just this one aspect of my life.
Yeah, absolutely. What about, so you do work in nutrition and that mind body connection. Do you work with more women than men?
Yes.
Okay.
I would say by, just accidentally, because I don't put myself out there as a women's counselor. However, I'm a big believer that, alignment produces results. So I don't think it's an accident that mostly women come to with me. Yeah.
And do you see a lot of the nutritional, like trauma or, I mentioned when I was throwing topics out to you, like food addiction, and do you see that as something that's prevalent?
Yeah. I think we're really messed up about food. I think, and I'm going to say something that is pretty controversial and also, depending on who hears this, may get me in trouble, but I don't think you can take education and focus on food out of, there's a big kind of approach when it comes to clinical, psychological niche that is, especially when you're talking about eating disorders or addictions or things like that. Like you have to separate the behavior and just heal. So you're not, you can't talk about food, you can't educate about food, but food is information. And our bodies are either assimilating that information and using it to better our bodies, or it's the opposite, or it's just sitting there and residual buildup is happening and we have chronic inflammation. And I think the connection between what we're eating and what that does in our microbiome, the gut environment, and how that translates to thought and mood and behavior.
Right.
That's not taught. Nobody knows, we can Google it because it's 2023. But this is not in any curriculum. Like I had to learn this from experience and because I sought out the information. But happiness is going to be dependent on your bacterial balance in your gut, and food impacts that. So I don't think we can separate the two. And I firmly believe that. I am also very kind and gentle about recognizing that that's a hard thing for us because our food, it's like, you can't separate them. It's an emotional part of our lives. It's a community part of our lives. It's a internal thought part of our lives. And then there's a physical satisfaction or lack thereof as well. So it's a very complicated web. But I don't think you can take it out of the whole human experience.
Yeah. Do you think someone that's listening, that's dealing with and has, whether they're ready to kind of open that up to anyone else yet or not, but they have identified, they have kind of come to terms in some way with, there are some there are some struggles they have or some unhealthy relationships they have with food, whether it's under or over. If someone is sitting there, would you recommend, counseling, like seeking counseling to, like you said, heal some of the causes rather than just.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think we do tend to over compartmentalize, like we've said. And when it comes to food or diet or weight loss or gain or whatever it might be, we go, oh, I need a diet program, or I need to join a gym, or I need to get a fitness or a nutrition coach only for that. And that may help, like, again, like we said a moment ago, like that may help temporarily, but what are the root causes? What are the root beliefs? How was I raised around food? Like, what are the things that have become a part of who I am that I'm not consciously addressing every day? And how is that playing a part in my relationship to food?
Yes, I love that. Okay, I'm going to go somewhere because you said we could go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to go somewhere because I always like on these, I do believe, like, whether I came up with the topic or we're just winging it like today, God's in it. We're doing it for his glory and to encourage and love on anyone that's listening. So I'll be somewhat vulnerable because I can relate here. I have, and this is going to sound funny coming here, but I'm just going there. I have worn hair extensions for probably over a decade. Some people know that about me. Some don't. If you didn't know and you know me now, you know.
There we are.
And I have gone through seasons where I felt like I had to take them out, and that wasn't just hair extensions, it was take off the nails and the outward stuff, right? And I did it because I felt like it had become an idol in my life, like something I needed. And so it wasn't like something was wrong with the things. It was something was wrong with the need for the things, right? And so I've gone through that. And then I've gone through where I felt like, okay, I've stripped it off. I crushed the idol. It was dead. And so now it was like, okay, it's okay to kind of go back in and get my nails done or what, nothing was wrong with that thing. And then I found myself back in the same situation where I'm like, oh no, I'm not just enjoying it. I need it again. And I was just having a conversation with a friend of mine about this like last week, the end of last week. And I'm going to send her this episode because I'm going to be like, listen, but I was sharing with her that I felt like I had gone back to that spot. And she said, well, it's because you had taken that thing off, but you had never really addressed the reason for that addiction.
Okay.
That idolatry.
Okay.
So I can relate to like what you're saying about healing that's needed if it's a food addiction or if it's an unhealthy,
Well, and I think the word that I'll use there, a lot of times people might shy away from the word addiction, either because they don't want to acknowledge it or it's like, no, that's not my problem. I'm not addicted to this thing. Right? That's such a strong word. I like the word attachment.
That's good.
Even speaking, I usually use that more in the realm of like life stuff, kind of like you were just saying about the hair and the nails, like how attached. And for me, it's my supplements, right? Like how can I go on a trip and not have this one supplement for 3 days, or do I have to have it because otherwise I'm not okay? I really am okay. But I have this mental attachment to this thing that the placebo effect is real. And I have to have this thing or else I'm not okay. Is that true? It's probably not true. But why have I projected this need being met onto this external thing? What is that about? And I think that's what you're getting at is like, oh, well, why do I feel like I'm not complete without that thing?
Yes. And you're right. It's an attachment. It doesn't have to be called an addiction. I totally.
No, and the word addiction is accurate, but it's not like people don't love to hear it.
And I could see, I'm thinking of people even in my mind that I'm like, if they heard addiction, they would say, oh no.
Yeah. Right.
Attachment. Yeah. So, and that's where it's counseling, it's connection. I mean, God designed us for community and to use our gifts. And you've obviously have some gifts that he's giving you for counseling others, and even specifically women, counseling and encouraging and exploring and, helping them find healing through some of these things. And so, whether it's food or whether it's the outside thing, some other form of attachment, the power of getting at why does it exist and finding healing is really where transformation occurs.
Yes. And coming back to the recognition that this word came up for me as I was hearing you say that we're all human. I've obviously come to a place where I accept that this is what I was made to do. But for some reason, it's hard to hear that I think I have gifts in that area, right? So the word humility came up for me, which to me, my study of the word humility, my experience has taught me that humility means I take up the space God created for me in this world. Even if that may be thought of in some other way, like, no, this is what he designed me for. So this is what I'm going to do, no matter what else around me is saying, doing, thinking, whatever. Right. Yeah. And I think that's the core issue there. And obviously I'm kind of saying that I even struggle with that. We all struggle with this, but it all comes back to an identity issue. It all comes back to, I was created like, I'm okay. I'm good enough. I am me. And so I got to build my life around that before all these other things come in, before I go for the craving foods, before I go for all the stuff that I do in my life. I got to be okay with me by myself when I'm alone because of who I am.
Yes.
Something that I think is really a big struggle for most of us.
Yes. Without the supplements, without the food, without the hair.
Yeah.
Well, no, I think that's powerful. And helping women, just encouraging them, anyone listening, I mean, that if there is a taboo or a stigma around counseling or even just asking for help, I mean, I think even just saying, hey, I have an attachment to this thing, you know what I mean? That's like the first step and even just being vulnerable, but there is a space where there are people like yourself where it's safe and confidential and unbiased.
Right.
And I like your approach to, you kind of navigate it with them rather than you're just directing them.
Well, it doesn't work if you just direct. Right. And I'm a pretty direct person. I think a lot of people who know me will go, yeah, like she's like all in, but that's not how change works. And also I'm not you. So it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't, and so I really have to, there's a big discipline in being a therapist that you have to be 100% totally present without any agenda, without any, predetermined idea of what's right for this person or not. You have to just kind of sit with them and be where they are. And then the other side of that is, and this is where I'm really convicted, just the belief that every human being has the same value and worth. And our goal is really to, strip off all the limiting beliefs and the limiting thoughts and the limiting behaviors that are keeping them from seeing themselves that way. So my belief in you as a person and my willingness to sit with you and where you're at, I think that's part of what makes it work. I don't know. I haven't come up with an answer for that yet, but I do it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's beautiful and it's rare. It's rare to not project our own stuff and to sit and to be able to empathize and see them where they are for who they are, regardless of whether we understand, agree, or feel the same.
Exactly.
That's good. Let me ask you, why do you, because we talked about identity, and I think that's a pretty, deep topic, probably for a lot of women, a lot of, struggle. Yeah. Why do you, what's your take on why is it such a struggle or identity?
Am I allowed to just blame Eve? That's in the right context. I always go, this is the Eve complex. This is, we can just, it's her fault. Yeah. We're always in conflict. But it's the human experience, right? So brain development, we know, most of us, this is pretty common knowledge, that your human brain is not fully developed until you're in your 20s. So that's this prefrontal cortex part of your brain that helps you relate to other people and make decisions and set goals and have abstract thought. The rest of your brain is really just instinct, memory, survival mechanisms, functions. Okay. So because of that, we're designed to be supported, nurtured, cared for, taught self-care, taught accountability, taught right from wrong by supportive adults. And everything throughout certain points in our lives, there are age markers when you really get into the theories and the approaches of it all, but you're absorbing life until you're old enough to really be experiencing it on your own. So everything you've absorbed becomes a thought, which becomes over repetition, becomes a belief. That is going to drive your emotional experiences, your feelings, the meaning you give things in life. That's going to determine how you interact with people, right? So who I am is really who I'm showing up as. And who I'm showing up as has everything to do with the influences in my life up to that point.
What I've absorbed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then we look at life and we go, well, I don't see anybody living an ideal life. I don't see anybody living perfection and being fully loved and accepted for who they are from day one and being taught the purity of right from wrong from day one. We're all living a different experience, and it may be very different from what God designed for us or not.
Yeah.
There's that, I don't know who to credit this to. Who came up with the whole metaphor of, two planes leaving from the same point, and one starts off with 1 degree difference in their navigation system, and they end up something like 6,000 miles away from where they were supposed to be.
I have not heard that. So
I probably totally just butchered it, but the concept is accurate, is that, it's just this one little variation from what was intended. And then if you keep traveling on that same path, you end up hundreds and thousands of miles from where you're really supposed to be. So, in therapy, we call it adaptation. We adapt to things that we go through, and that adaptation either takes root and then you keep going in that direction, or you go, okay, this happened. This is, let me heal around it. I can pivot and get back on course. But how often does that happen throughout childhood? Probably not very often.
Right.
So we find ourselves as fully thinking adults with all these brain accessibilities and powers, and we go, who am I? I don't know. Or we aren't even aware of that. We're
so far into that at that point.
Yep.
That to get back is, it's, nothing short of Jesus coming in.
Well, right. Getting back is completely impossible, right? Like we can't go backwards.
Right.
So that's literally impossible, but we have to figure out how to get into alignment with what was intended for us. And then we've got neural pathways, brain patterns, behavior patterns, addictions, attachments, all these things to work through. Never mind that most of them are tied up in relationships with people. So that makes it even harder.
Wow. Lots of stuff. So if you were in doubt that you should see a counselor,
it's for everyone. It's for everyone.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Any last, as we wrap, any words you want to leave or encouragement you want to leave for women listening, just based on kind of what we talked about? We went everywhere. So, I like the title, The Real Deal, because these are the real things. And we just skimmed the surface, but
I think that's a great way to say that.
One person this is stuff we're all dealing with in some way.
Yeah. I think that right there is the encouragement that you are actually never alone, and your experience is 100% authentic to you. But the things that we struggle with as humans are comprehensive and universal. We all struggle with purpose. We all struggle with identity. We all struggle with contribution and meaning in the world around us and wanting to feel fulfilled and satisfied with our lives. And that's not a bad thing. We were designed to make an impact, and we were designed to enjoy it and have a meaningful experience while it's happening. And no one should think that they aren't worthy of that. And everyone deserves an opportunity to get there for themselves. So no matter what you're struggling with, even just having a conversation with someone in a safe place may help you start to get there.
Yeah, so good. Man, so good. So if anyone does want to connect with you, how do they get in touch with you?
The best way is, I think I have a contact form on my website. So that's awardinglife.com. Super simple, play on my name, but also to recognize that you are worthy of recognition. That's what that means. So my website, contact me. And then, whether it's a question of what direction should they go in or whatever, like that's a good place to start with contact.
Okay. Awesome. Thanks, Amanda, for being here. Good stuff.
Thank you.
I know I'm encouraged.
Good. I'm glad. It's like you said, it was just a skim the surface, but I think we definitely shed some light on much deeper roots.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks everyone that tuned in to listen. And we hope that you're encouraged and know that you're loved and you are valuable and you are not alone. All right. Thanks, Amanda.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to this episode of the Couch Conversations. I hope you're inspired and ready to tackle the day knowing you're loved and have a purpose. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and I'd love it if you left us a rating and a review so more people can join us on this journey. We'll see you next time.